Right, thank you so much for joining us for part 3 of our mapping in action, and thank you for sticking with us when we had to cancel last week. Fortunately, it couldn't be helped. It was one of these things, or 2 weeks ago rather, but here we are today to finish up with our part 3 of our mapping in action series. Alice and I are really excited to bring you this session, because we also have Steve Blow coming on from Anagach Woods Trust to tell us a little bit about the work that he has done with mapping. Alice, I'm going to let you introduce the objectives for today, and then we'll pass over to Steve.
Yeah, so we're going to hear from Steve first. I think it's really useful to get an example of how a community woodland has approached mapping, because there's so many platforms out there and approaches that you can take. I think, yeah, having a kind of case study is useful. And then I'm going to do a couple of practical demonstrations. So I'm going to focus on MyForest and Avenza for the day. And I'm going to go through doing some mapping in MyForest and then exporting a map. And then I'm going to show you how to upload it to Avenza, which is like a mobile field mapping app. And then go through recording data in Avenza, and then export that data, and then go back into MyForest and show you how to sound issues. Is anyone else having sound issues? No. Okay, well, I'll just keep going and then hopefully it improves. Yeah, and then go back into MyForest and show you how to upload the data and edit your map if you need to. And that approach of using one platform on the computer and then a separate platform for your mobile and like field recording is quite common in forestry, particularly if you don't want to pay for softwares, but it can often seem quite confusing and clunky if you're getting started. So I guess today I'm trying to like reiterate that that is quite common, and just becoming familiar with that process. Cool. Okay, Steve, you can take over.
Thanks very much, Alice. That's me taken on the control. So so I've thanks for inviting me along. Just wanted to do a quick kind of intro to me and then to the woods, and then sort of fire through the things that we've been using, things that I've been using. So at the moment I work for the Cairngorms Connect project. So within that, I'm using kind of mapping, primarily at the moment RSPB's Merlin system, bits of ArcGIS online, but not very much because I find it massively confusing too, because I don't use it that often. And then sort of phone-based stuff for navigating around sites. So yeah, kind of using stuff, but not a super regular user in terms of mapping, but as part of what the woods have been working on over the last little while. I was going to sort of feedback on that and our experience a little bit with that. So Anagach is nearly 390 hectares of a woodland, so a really big site. It's a 18th century pine plantation, originally established by the Grant family on the edge of Granton on Spey, and it has been managed, I suppose, over time as a commercial plantation, but with some exotics kind of planted, particularly around sort of closer into the town along some of the main sort of routes, access paths and things through the wood. And it has sort of, as a result of that thinning and stuff, then it has become sort of more and more kind of diverse and natural, particularly in the western half of the woods, less so in the eastern half, which has been less kind of managed. So there's bits and bobs of beech, bits of western hemlock and spruce trees in the western end. So part of our job is getting rid of those, and so things like mapping some of the access sort of bits of work that we do, mapping some of the sort of tree surveys, things like that are useful. And the trust itself, the wood was bought in 2002. and Basil Dunlop, who was the forester for Seafield Estate, was kind of involved as well as part of the very early sort of stages of Anagach Woods Trust. So he's still our sort of chairman at the moment, honorary president, sorry. And he, yeah, so he's got all that kind of knowledge of the site. The trust in the last sort of 3 years has been really quite active, so we've increased the amount of volunteering activity and practical work sessions. And with that, that's come with it the sort of the need to know more about the woods and map stuff out. So we've worked with peers on the urban woodland management plan, and are continuing to develop those sides of things. Early days, so it is kind of something that I suppose we're looking at using a few different systems. We're trying a few different systems, and I was going to go through those today. What 3 words? Avenza and QGIS and the QField app. Those are the 3 ones I was going to look at today primarily, and really we are just using them for recording features, bits of species information, bits of access, both infrastructure, condition of benches, that kind of thing, locations, or reporting issues. We're doing our tree safety surveys and recording some of that, and then information around practical work sessions and planning for sort of future works. And then, as I mentioned, the urban woodland management plan with peers that's provided us with another good selection of information, all the shape files that he used in that to help build up our picture of the woods. So I'll kind of run through the 3 different systems. First one being what 3 words. You can access it on the laptop or on the phone, on the app on the phone. This is a sort of a screen grab. I've done sort of quite a lot of screen grabs sort of to try and illustrate sort of the process. Screen grab off the laptop. This is where Granton is. This is where the woods are, and so you can kind of be out at a vast scale, sort of zoom in, or on the phone. When you switch it on the phone, then it takes you to your kind of local area and shows you where you are, with a little blue dot, which I think is kind of underneath the little laser pointer there. On the phone, it shows you standards kind of like mapping backdrop. All the red blobs are sort of pins that I've or squares that I've marked. I've recorded something in, or some of the other trustees have sort of recorded something in, and it is possible to share information over some of those locations. The middle picture is with an aerial image, and you can hopefully just make out kind of that you've got the individual squares, 3 meter squares, and each 3 meter square has its own totally unique 3 words that define it, and you just got to be really, really careful to get the right words, and that you don't add an S or something like that, so that you can sort of relocate that square. It's been really kind of quick and simple to use. Is quite handy just for giving people directions. Obviously, it will also can use it to navigate and stuff. So it can take you to squares. And the only thing that I've noticed since using it has been when you switch it on, you see the bigger blue circle. It's the accuracy gets sort of better and better over a few seconds, while it kind of really hones in on where you are. A couple of times, if somebody switched the app on and quite quickly has selected sort of the square where the phone thinks it is, it's actually the wrong square, and it can be hundreds of meters away from the location. So give it time to home in on where you are. Let that blue circle get small, so it's just the smallest possible around the blue dot, and then select the square that you want. You can also look at those squares and identify an area, use the aerial sort of imagery, for example, and just focus in on that and pick the square that you want to send people to. It was also used in like an early bit of the website. So Anagach Woods had a Linktree website, and within these lists, sort of these buttons that you could press, there was one that was for reporting an issue. took you to this Google Google form, and you could identify an issue, and over here you can actually use the links in that form for people to find their location and record their location and then report that. I don't think it was used massively, but it was an interesting kind of extra way of engaging with people who are out on the site to get some reports, particularly if it's a fallen over tree or something like that that you haven't picked up yet. Avenza was the next one. Also, this is just the main homepage on the website, but I use it almost exclusively on the phone. And there's a little icon with the sun and the sort of path, and that click on that and it takes you to the home screen, where you can. It's a free app for basic use. You can have a sort of a pro version that you pay for, which gives you kind of ability to have more maps saved on the phone and stuff. But for just general use, I still use the free version. You've got the base map that you can kind of click on, and that takes you into this sort of a view over here on the right. It also has saved maps. I'll just mention about those later, but these are separate georeferenced maps that I think Alice might be talking about later. So when you open the base map, again, you'll have a blue dot where you are. You can use this little arrow up in the top to sort of locate yourself, have the phone kind of sit on top of where you are. No, Fred, I don't know what the subscription cost is. So yeah, you can put that with the blue dot to put where you want to be, and then you can click on this little green icon down here, and it establishes a pin. And when you've done that, then it brings you up the page where you can add the information in, give it a name, add a photo, give it a description. All of that is kind of useful information just to have, so you can identify it. And this is information you can export sort of later on. You can identify pins that you've already made just to sort of see what's there and see what information is available. And you can customize the pins. Everything's red on mine, but you can, with some of the maps I've got, then you can do different colors to represent different issues or different points. It's also got a neat thing pushing the kind of the ruler and the pencil down in the bottom left hand corner to do drawing and measuring, and that can be sort of straight lines, or it can be polygons, and it works out sort of sizes for you. So again, quite a handy little sort of feature on that app. And then swiping up, the bit at the bottom of the map reveals the kind of compass and the ability to also track yourself. So you can sort of use the tracking function. If you want to go for a walk and map out an area, then the phone will just sort of follow you and create that tracked sort of polygon, which you can then save and again work out areas, or save that information and then export it for use on a computer, for example, or a GIS system or something. It's got some other bits and pieces, navigations, and route creation. I don't tend to use very many of those other features at all. Primarily for me, it's like out in the woods, walking around and just recording pins as I go. The last sort of image is one of these georeferenced maps. So if you have the access to a georeferenced map, which can be produced from ArcGIS systems, I guess QGIS, the Merlin maps that come out from the RSPB system, all kind of are related to, they have information within them that puts them in the right part of the world. So with this one, can have load the map in, and then it just gives me a kind of more information on the map that I wouldn't get on the base map, and then I can sort of zoom in. So this image has got some of the sort of zones for tree safety survey routes, through here, an area that we were looking at for grazing kind of over here. So all useful kind of extra bits of information for navigating around the woods and recording information within those areas. Last one is QGIS, which is the one that we've probably used the least. I would say things like What3Words and Avenza is relatively quick and easy to kind of load on the phone or used just on the phone and out in the woods. The QGIS is the sort of formal GIS system. Again, free to put on your computer and use. So I've got that, which again works with a sort of a series of maps that are saved onto the system, and I can open one of those, and then that gives me sort of the map of the woods, and then all the layers on the left here that I can modify, edit, add new layers, that kind of thing, to record the information. And that one just sits on the computer, and I can produce maps sort of from that. And then also within this system, you can produce this Q field related app. So something that then goes on the phone, has the map, the Anagach Woods map kind of saved within that, and then can come up on the phone, a sort of a small excerpt, if you like, of the main map that's on the laptop sort of system. And that again is showing me all the points and accessed layers that the QGIS map has, and I can see all of those, and I can edit all of those using the little edit buttons, or I can just use it for navigating around the woods. If I'm doing editing, then I can put the target wherever I want to go, or again get the targets follow me in terms of where I am. Click on the sort of the green button to add a new dot, and record that, put the relevant information about that, and then save it. And then when you're back at the computer, that information can be uploaded to kind of get the sort of the central map up to date. You can also use it if you're just out and about navigating. You can sort of just click on features within the app, and it will tell you what's there. So you can use it just again for general information out on the site. And that's me having gone through all the bits and pieces. So just another example of mapping, but a much more fun day, I think, of the volunteers. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Steve. Alice, have we got time for questions just now, or do you want to keep them till the end?
Steve, are you staying till the end?
Yeah, I'll stick around.
Cool. Okay, let's keep them till the end.
Yeah.
I've suddenly I can hear my voice, but hopefully you guys can only hear it once and not twice. Cool, thanks, Steve. It's good to hear. Yeah, it's good to see like an example of a woodland kind of taking the kind of wiggly path that is trying to become comfortable with a mapping platform, and that is often the journey that groups go on. So not an unusual route to trial out different options and then settle with the one that you're most comfortable with. Cool, I'm going to go straight on to the demonstration. I chose MyForest because I think it's pretty accessible, and it's sort of a standard if you do want to submit them for like a felon license. Yeah, so let's get started. I'm going to stop sharing the presentation and then share my screen. Can you all see MyForest? Great. Okay, so you create an account by clicking on register, and then you log in. And when you log in, it comes up with this screen. So I've already set up a test version. So I click on my woodland and it takes me to this page. So it's kind of maybe should be looking familiar based on what we covered in previous weeks. So there's the panel on the left-hand side, and then there's the map view on the right-hand side. And this is what you can like pan about on and zoom in and out and like click on things and information pops up. So for today, we're going to do an example of creating a map for a felon license. So in reality, if you're applying for a felon license, you would need two maps. One of them is showing what you're going to fell, and one of them is showing what you're going to restock with. But for today, we're just going to create a felon map. So this is my community woodland in this example, and I've already divided it into 3 compartments. If you've bought a woodland, particularly if you bought maybe like a productive woodland, it's most likely already going to have been divided into compartments and subcompartments. These are kind of like the standard way in which we divide a forest in forestry, and can be confusing if you're not familiar with it, because they're in theory kind of an arbitrary way of dividing a forest, but there's kind of best practice. So you might divide the forest based on species classification or age or natural features in the landscape, such as roads or rivers or whatever, to create your compartments and your subcompartments. If you have a really complicated big forest, you might have, say, like 6 compartments, and within every compartment there might be 4, 5 or 6 subcompartments, or your entire forest might be made up of 1 or 2 compartments and that's it. Yeah, there's lots of material online to give you advice on how to do that, but starting to, like, from a mapping perspective, starting to visualize your forest in terms of compartments and subcompartments is very useful, and it's the like main starting point. So here I've divided it into compartment 1 is a natural regen of about 20-30 years old. Compartment 2 is the established forest that I'm applying for a felon license for. And compartment 3 is an open ground and new woodland creation that has been planted in the last 10 years. So that's how I've kind of divided my forest into 3 compartments. So first I'm going to create subcompartments in compartment 2, which I'm planning to fell, because for winter 26-27, I only want to fell half of this compartment. So I'm going to split it into 2 subcompartments. So in my panel on the left-hand side, you can see compartments, and I'll click this little drop-down arrow and select subcompartment. And I tick management. I'm going to leave the name blank for just now, and I'm going to select letter A, so it's defined as 2A, and I click create subcompartment. So nothing's come up on the map, but you can see that it's come up here as A. And then I click these 3 dots and I say add mapping. And now a little cursor comes up. I can zoom in and I want to start mapping. So I'm going to click here, and as I move up, you can see that the little cursor wants to like ping itself. It's almost like a magnet to this line, but I want it to ping to the edge, to the points or the corners. So this pinging is called snapping in GIS, and instead of snapping on edges, I'm going to select snap to corners, and now it's going to snap to that corner, and it's going to snap to that corner, and I'm just left clicking and creating this subcompartment, and I finish by clicking at the start, and that's subcompartment 2A created, and it's already come up the area for me of 1.55 hectares. I'm then going to create subcompartment 2. So again, in the left-hand panel, I select add subcompartment, management, letter B, and create subcompartment. And I'm going to do the same, click the 3 dots, add mapping, and again, it's just going to ping to the corners, and I map. And that's 1.21 hectares. Now I can edit these. So if I don't like the color, then I can go in and I can select these 3 dots and select edit mapping. And I can change the color to be orange if I want. And I just click save. It's important every time you go into that option, so the 3 dots and edit mapping, it's important you click save and not just close, otherwise it won't save any of your changes. I might want to add some more information about these 2 subcompartments. So I can click these 3 dots and say edit general data. And this is where I can add any information about designations or soils or any site-specific notes or photographs. So it's quite a good, MyForest is like a really amazing tool of just kind of like gathering data, and you could like gather the data slowly over like a year, and it kind of stores it all spatially and possibly in a way. And I can also edit management data, which is where I could add information about the species on site. And this editing the management data and like inputting information in here is what MyForest uses to build up information on like timber quantities. So if you're wanting to use it as a way to populate a felon license, MyForest kind of does all the mensuration stuff for you in here. Yeah, which is often a lot easier than doing it yourself. But for this example, I'm going to add species. I'm going to just say 100% of it is conifer and click close because I don't want to add too much detail right now. Cool. So while we're here, I might as well add some more features. So under the features section, I want to add the main path that goes into the woodland. So I'm going to click this add feature button, and I'm going to name it path, and it's going to be a line. As we talked about in previous weeks, any like paths or roads or things like that tend to be mapped as lines. I click create feature, and again it only pops up here, nothing happens on the map yet until I click these 3 dots and do add mapping. And so I start here and I just click along this desire line that you can see on Google Imagery. And you can see as I get close to a corner, because I've got the snapping on, it kind of pings over. But I actually don't want the line to go in that direction. And in this instance, the snapping is kind of annoying. So I'm going to switch it off. And that means I can get really close to this edge and it's not pinging over. And I map the line all the way to the hut, and then I right click for it to finish. And again, it comes up with the length of 204 meters. So again, if you're applying for funding for path improvements, instead of having to actually go on site and measure the line with a long tape measure or whatever piece of kit that you have, you can just do it on MyForest. And I want to edit the mapping because I want the line to be white. So I just do that and select save. And then I also want to map the hut that's in the community woodland. So I go under features again and click add. And I'm going to label it hut. And this time it's a point. Again, what we talked about in previous weeks, huts and like compost toilets and badger sets, they tend to all be marked as points from a mapping perspective. And I do create feature. And then again, it's come up here, but not in my map viewer because I have to map it. So I click the 3 dots and select add mapping. And I'm just going to pop it here. And then there's my hut. Cool. So if I move down, the next option is to create a map. So what's, again, often confusing if you're not familiar with mapping is you can kind of be like, why can't I just print this page? But often what happens in web maps is you have your panel and you have your viewer, which you interact with, and then you have to like open another window, and that's where you make your map for printing. So this is what I'm about to do now. So under maps, I do the add button, and I'm going to call it a felon map. I select create map. And again, it's popped up here, but nothing's changed over here. I click the 3 dots and I select edit map. And now it kind of takes me almost as if it's to a new window. And this is again, what's kind of a bit confusing if you're not familiar with the app. You're like, okay, well, now I don't really understand why it's changed, but this is almost as if it's opened a new tab. And this is where you're like making your map for export. So if we just start from the top left-hand corner, we've titled the map felon map. And at the moment, the scale is at 1 to 10,000. because this woodland's quite small, that is too zoomed out for the field work that I want to do. So I'm going to make it 1 to 5,000 and it's zoomed in. And then at the moment, it's not actually on my woodland. It's situated like just to the northeast. So I'm going to drag this down to be over where my community woodland is, which is this little section here and goes along here. And then for the base map, I'm going to keep it as Google Satellite, but there's other options. So you could have it as OpenStreetMap, which is a lot more basic. You can have it with Google Satellite with kind of like road information on, but that's too cluttered for me just now. So I'm just going to keep it as Google Satellite. And now we're going to build up the map for printing. So this is where we need to add layers. So I click this little arrow and I select add. And then I again select the 3 dots and say select mapping. And I want all of my compartments that were on my previous map view to be on this map that I'm going to print. So I'm selecting check all compartments and I'm going to select confirm. Now it changes the styling that you did on the previous map, which is kind of annoying. I don't know why it does that, but you basically need to like change it again in this view. So I'm going to click the 3 dots and say edit this layer. And I want the actual compartments to be translucent. I want the line to be orange and maybe a bit thicker so I can like see the compartments easily. And I'm going to name the layer compartments so I understand what it is. And then I'm going to add the polygon for the subcompartment 2A, which I want to fill. So again, I select add and a new layer pops up. I click the 3 dots and select mapping. And I'm just going to click 2A. I'm not going to click 2B because I don't want that to be on my map that I'm going to go out into the field with, because it's not necessary at the moment. So again, when you're building up your map, you're like continuously thinking, what's the map going to be used for and what needs to be included on it and when is it getting too cluttered. And I click confirm. And I'm going to edit this layer again because I want it to be red. To be red, and I'm going to say Berlin 2026/27 and select close. Now I want to add some labels. So I'm going to select existing labels. So all the labels that were on my previous map view come up on here. And you can also add unique labels if you want. So say you were wanted a bit more information on this map, I could select the add button and this new label pops up, which I can move about. I'm going to position it just here and I'm going to say to spell winter 2026/27. Position it just there. Cool. So that's all I want to do for just now. So now I'm going to export this map as a georeferenced PDF. So first I need to save and close it. And now I'm back to this original window, which is like kind of confusing. MyForest is kind of like flicking you backwards and forwards, but you'll get familiar with that. And then under the maps, the Felon map is here, and I'm going to select the 3 dots and click download geospatial map. This normally takes like 30 seconds to download. And in the case of right now, when it takes longer than a few seconds, then this is the map that gets spat out. So it's got a title, Felon map. It's got my compartment boundaries 1, 2, and 3, and it's got the area that I want to fell. Felon proposal, and then woodland compartments. This is the legend. It's got the scale 1 to 2,500, and it's got the north, and then it's got the kind of the permissions to use Google Satellite and MyForest logo. This is actually like suffice enough to submit to Scottish Forestry if you want to, as part of the Felon license application. But we're going to upload it into Avenza and it's georeferenced. So when you upload it into Avenza and you go onto this site, it's gonna you're going to be visible in Avenza, and then you can start mapping in the field. I'm going to stop sharing and go back to the PowerPoint presentation. Can you put that back up, Sharon?
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. Just take a wee minute to upload. Can I ask a question in the meantime?
Yeah.
So for me, when Steve, you were explaining Avenza, I'm thinking, do you need signal for that to work in the woodland? Because in most parts of rural Scotland, signal's pretty poor. So how does that work?
No, you don't need signal. No, it works offline.
Great. And then
yeah,
as soon as you get online, it just stores all that and then puts everything, updates everything.
Yeah, it just stores it on your phone. Yeah, and then you export it when you're back in signal.
That's useful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is just taking a wee second.
Any other questions, I guess, while we're here about MyForest and making a map? I would say, yeah, just try it out. If it seems confusing or overwhelming, maybe like watch back the recording. And it's mainly just getting familiar with where to click. And once you've done that, making maps becomes actually pretty quick and intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to download it, Sharon, or is it working?
It's just because it's live. Let me try again. It's never just got stuck. One more time. Sure, I'm going to stop again and do it this way. Replace instead of replace. I find the live walkthrough there really useful. See things like, like the line was going to the different corners or it wasn't, that would drive me nuts. But knowing
yeah, it does drive you nuts, and that's the thing. You often just need one person to be like, just switch it off, and then you're like, oh, okay, great.
Makes such a difference. Come on.
Neville, they're all stored in MyForest, and then you can export them if you wanted to. So you could export them as shape files, or you could export them as a KML file and upload it into like another mapping software. So you could upload it into QField if you wanted, or into QGIS or whatever.
Could I check as well? Can you have multiple people logging in then to that MyForest sort of thing? Because I think that's one of the issues that we've had is like trying to share it and trying to find a way that does hold it centrally that people, multiple people can contribute to.
Yeah. Yeah. You can have multiple users access in the same map, and you can also have an account, where multiple users can access. So that is a big advantage of it, rather than having to like send files between different people in the organization. So yeah, now in theory, you can log into MyForest, you can map compartments and subcompartments, you can add features, and then you can create a map and you can export that map. And that map is georeferenced and you can upload it to an app and do some field work. So if we're...
You need to take control, Alice.
Take control. Cool. So now onto Avenza. Avenza's a mobile app only. So to demonstrate how to use it, I have created a video, which I'm going to play now. And kind of continuing with the same example of we're wanting to create a felon map. We've made the map in MyForest, and now we're just wanting to check that we've got all of the boundaries right and that we haven't like missed any important features. So that's what I do now in this video. Hopefully you can all hear it.
So I've opened Avenza
and I'm in My Maps, as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner. First, we need to add our map that we've just created in MyForest. So I select the Add button at the top right of the page and click Import Maps. And then from Storage Locations, which is near the bottom, select that. And as I've downloaded the map to my phone from an email, I'm going to navigate to Downloads and then MyForest Map and then click Open. As you can see, it's then loading in Avenza. And I select it, and then this is the map that we've just created. You can see the title, Felon Map at the top, and then on the right there's the legend, Felon Proposal and Woodland Compartments. And if I was on site and within the map frame, it would also come up with a little blue circle showing my location, which would move as I move around the forest. This is a really handy feature of Avenza as it allows you to see exactly where you are and allows you to map accurately. So for this example, I'm on site and my aim is to check if my proposed felon area boundary, so this 2A, if it's correct, if all the trees that I want to include are within the polygon, and if there's anything other that I notice on site that I should map in relation to felon that might be important. Okay, so I've entered the site over here and I'm walking through the woodland to the east. When I get to about here, I realise that there's quite a lot of larch, and the larch is what I'm wanting to fell in this example. So my original polygon boundary over here is slightly incorrect. So I'm going to add a little polygon extension so that when I'm back on the computer and in MyForest, I can then edit the felon area accordingly. So to do this, I click the little measuring tool, like the ruler and the pen, that's in the bottom left-hand corner, and select Draw and Measure. And then I'm going to move this bullseye to where I want to make my first point, which is going to be here. And I click Add Point, and then I move the bullseye again, and click Add Point, and then I do this a few more times until I get a completed polygon. Now you can see at the top of the page it says the total distance is 0.24 kilometres, so that's the perimeter of this area. But I want to know the hectareage. So I'm going to make it into a polygon by pressing the square button in the bottom of the page. And now you can see it says total area 0.36 hectares, and it's also retained the 0.24 kilometre perimeter measurement, which is useful. And now I need to select the tick button, and then that's my area added. And I want to make a couple of edits to this polygon so that I remember what the polygon is showing when I'm back at the computer, or if I need to send it to a colleague for them to make the mapping changes, then they can make sense of my data. So I select area 1, and for the name I'm going to put to fell. I could also change the style colour if I wanted to, but I'm going to keep it the same. I could add photos and I could add a description. But I'm not going to do any of that for just now, and I'm just going to click Close. And as you can see, the name's changed to fell. So I'm going to continue walking east through the woodland. When I get to about here, I spot a badger set, and I want to mark this on the map. So I select the point marker in the bottom right-hand corner, and I want to add a place mark name, and I'm going to call it badger set. I'm going to change the style to be green. I'm not going to add a photo, and I'm going to add a description that says active. And then click done, back, and then submit. And there's my point that identifies where a badger set is. I then keep walking east through the woodland, and I notice that there is a way leaf line, like an overhead power line running north to south pretty much, and I want to mark that in. So I'm again going to select the measure tool in the bottom left hand corner, so the ruler and the pen, and select draw and measure. Move the bullseye to the starting point and select add point, and then to the end point and select add point, and this time I'm going to keep it as a line, so 0.08 kilometers, and I'm going to select the tick button. And again, I want to rename this, so I click the label and I write overhead power line, and I'm going to make the color yellow, and I'm going to select close, and there's my overhead power line. Now I finished walking around the site and I want to export my features. So I select the map layers symbol in the bottom right corner, and there's my layer popped up. It says there's 3 objects in it, and if I want to just check this, then I click on it, and there's my badger set, my overhead power line, and my 2-fell polygon compartment extension. So I click back, and then I select the 3 dots on the right hand side and select export. And as mentioned last week, we want to keep it as a KML, but I'm going to rename it now before I forget or before I export it. So whoever gets the file knows what information it's holding. And I'm going to keep everything else the same and click export. And then I can choose how I want to export it. So I'm going to send it as an email to myself. Great, there's it attached, and I click send. And then close. And then that's me finished, and I can now leave. Again, that might be a video that you rewatch if you go out and try and use Avenza and get stuck. But yeah, so we've now exported the data, our field data. And I guess also just to recap, in theory now, after that one video, you can download Avenza and you can import your georeferenced base map, and you can map features on it, and you can edit these features and add photographs to the points and things like that, and then you can export the data as a KML. Now I'm going to go back to Avenza, back to MyForest, sorry. So share my screen again. Cool. And so we're going to continue working down the left-hand panel. So I'm going to show you how to import that data. But before I do that, under management, if I click the add button, you can see that it pops up with a Scottish Forestry Management Plan template and a Scottish Forestry Felon Permission application template. So again, if you've never populated these, then you can do it in Avenza, and it can often be a slightly more user-friendly way to populate them, and they'll kind of guide you through filling in the information, which is a really unique feature of MyForest, which I just wanted to flag up. But yeah, so at the bottom I click import mapping, and for the data that I recorded, I want to select feature geometries and choose file. And there's the CWA trial KML that I just exported. I'm going to select open and click import. And now you can see the polygon and the badger set and the way leaf that I mapped are now on my map. It doesn't import the labels, which is a bit annoying. So the first thing that I tend to do is rename them so that when I come back to this map, I remember what they are. So the polygon, I'm going to rename, oops, wrong one. So I click these 3 and do edit data. And then instead of import 3, I'm going to call it additional area to fell and click save changes. And then for the badger set, I'm going to recall it. Oops, again, that wasn't the right bit. Click on the 3 dots, edit data, and I'm going to recall it badger set. And then for the way leave again, I'm going to click on the 2 dots, edit data, and call it way leave. So now my map kind of makes a lot more sense, particularly if I've like taken field data, put it on the map, and then maybe not come back to the map for a few months. It means when I come back, I kind of like know what all these features are. So now this additional area to fill, I want to edit polygon 2A to include this area. So I'm going to go back up to the compartments and go to subcompartment 2A and click these 3 dots and select edit mapping. And if you want to change a polygon, you basically click on the squares and drag them over. The little squares and drag them over and click save. So now I've made 2A bigger, but now it's overlapping 2B. So I want to make 2B shorter. So I'm going to click these 3 dots and select edit mapping. And again, click on the square and I'm going to pull it over here. But because I don't have snapping on, there's now this like gap, which I kind of want to avoid. So I want to go to snapping and click corner. And then it's going to snap to that corner, which is what I kind of want to happen for like kind of neat mapping. Cool. And then I click save. And now this additional area to fill is kind of redundant and it's kind of making my map quite cluttered. So I'm going to click these 3 dots and select hide mapping and hide label. And now it's kind of gone and it's not cluttering up the map. And I've redrawn 2A and we're kind of good to go. So what you would do is basically go back into your felon map. Just kind of check that it all looks okay. So your 2A is now bigger. And yeah, it's kind of ready to go. So you save and close. And what you would do is just re-export the map. Yep, cool. That's basically all the demonstration. Sharon, can you share the presentation one last time?
I feel I need to give you a round of applause. That was pretty good. Well done.
I know I would like you to have empathy for me for sitting through 7 minutes of my own voice in that video as well. Be painful.
Cool.
Yeah. So so now in theory you can map and would encourage you all to get started. Yeah, if you want to, and definitely don't feel limited by just having to use Avenza and MyForest, but I think they're quite accessible places to start, and you can kind of like branch out to more complicated platforms if you want. While Sharon loads the presentation again, any questions? Sharon, I could also share the presentation at this end, but
yeah, probably better just doing that just now then, because I don't know why it's taking so long.
What do I do again? Just share screen?
Yeah. Or I can do it. I've got it open here.
Oh yeah, cool. Preparing your slides. Great. Sorry, I'll just go back to the end. Great. I guess the only last thing I wanted to comment on was a lot of the focus of this mini series, which is like mapping is such a big topic, and yeah, you can do much more in depth and thorough courses if you do want to really get into it. But one thing we didn't, a lot of the map making that I focused on because I thought it would be most useful to community woodlands is like making maps for operational work or grant applications or things like that. But another reason why community woodland groups might want to make maps is for leaflets or as images on like welcoming signs to the forest to show footpaths and things like that. And if you want to do that, I would probably encourage you to just go to a professional mapper who will have specialized software to make a map that's very engaging and user-friendly and like interesting for someone to look at. You'll see with MyForest and mainly with MyForest, the map that was outputted is quite basic, and you can't play about with things like the legend, you can't move it about, or you can't add things to the map. And if you use QGIS, you have more functionality. And then if you start to pay for different softwares, you have even more like flexibility in terms of like styling and background maps and things like that. And that's kind of what you're paying for. So if you're wanting to make like a engaging map for a leaflet, I would probably encourage you to go to a professional mapper that specializes in that. I found quite a few examples online, which I'll send around with the kind of follow-up notes. Of a range of different companies and individuals that you could approach that are mainly Scotland based. And yeah, I'd encourage you to get started, and hope you do. But I guess the other intention of this series was for it to enable you to like understand what you need to map for your woodland, and also what you could maybe do in-house and what you want to commit to doing in-house, and what you might want to contract out if that's easier. There's a lot of people where mapping is very quick and easy for them, so sometimes it might be easier to do that. And hopefully this series would give you more, I guess, knowledge and confidence to know like what to ask for, and like be able to assess like rates for the tender, and like what is realistic and who's just kind of like charging you a lot of money for what is just like a couple of hours of work. So it can hopefully make you a bit more savvy with that. And if you do really want to get into mapping, then there's a number of like QGIS training courses, and also like other beginner mapping courses that are often online that you can sign up for. They're often not cheap, like this 3-day one is £415. But yeah, they'll probably be a lot more thorough and whole days. And there's lots of resources and training manuals online as well. Yeah, I'm not sure if we gathered your phone numbers as part of the sign-up forms, but if you are interested in joining like a CWA mapping WhatsApp group where you can kind of like ask quick-fire questions or whatever, then feel free to drop me an email and your phone number, and I'll add you to that. It's a trial for us, and we're going to see if it works and if there's uptake for it. And that's it. Finished exactly on time, which was unexpected. I thought I'd run over. If you can fill the form, I'm sure Sharon will send it around with the resources that we'll send around next week. But would really appreciate that. And any questions for myself or Steve?
Alice, can I ask quickly? First of all, say that was fantastic, and the introduction to MyForest and Avenza was really brilliant. I spent a lot of time playing with QGIS and struggled in a lot of areas, but eventually slowly got to grips with it. But one of the things, well, two issues I've had big problems with is, and you'll see from my question in the comments thing about folder management and that whole sort of discipline. And also when you're out in the field using QField, being able to download where you haven't got signal, being able to download a decent static background so you can actually see where you are the two biggest issues I've encountered. Can you offer any advice on that?
What app are you using that where you haven't been able to access the background map? Is that QField?
QField, yeah.
Yeah, then I would use MyForest and upload a georeferenced map, like what we just did, like what I showed in the example, and then the background satellite imagery will be there even if you're offline.
Okay, brilliant.
Yeah, and then for folder management, I can email you afterwards the file structure that I use, and yeah, it does take discipline, and I have definitely, when I studied GIS, got myself in lots of chaotic holes for not being disciplined, and that was a good use of word. I kind of have a structure that I quite like to follow now, of storing like shape files in one folder and then like exports in another, and yeah. But yeah,
that's exactly the discipline I need. That would be amazing. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, great.
I think for me, what's been really useful, Alice, is to realise that you don't just have to use one app to get the information that you want. You could, like, so today, just using MyForest to be able to download that georeferenced map, and then you can upload that into whichever other platform you are needing to use. I think that's a really insightful thing to know. So that's been really helpful to see that. That makes it, you know, really clear, and you're
yeah,
you know,
and it is
being
confusing,
smart, aren't you?
Yeah, and a lot of people do get confused by that when they're starting, and I guess it's like a result of there not being a standardization, which in a way is like a grand thing, because then it means more competitors, I guess, out there. But it is confusing for a lot of people. Yeah.
So there's one question from Jack, and then we'll need to wrap up, folks, and we're over time. Jack's asking about any experience of a map for a fire plan.
I've never made maps for fire plans, no. I'm sure I'm sure there's examples online. That's I can try find one for you, Jack, and send it over. I've never made one. But I'm sure there's examples out there.
Thanks.
Perfect, thank you, Alice.
Yeah. We were actually talking about fire. Sorry, we were actually CWA were talking about fire planning the other day, and we were like, there's probably also examples of really good maps, and we got contacted by someone in California who have lots of wildfires, and there's probably like excellent examples of fire maps and different types, whether it's like evacuation routes or like grade and risk in the forest or whatever that are out there, which should be quite interesting to explore. Yeah,
brilliant. Thank you. Can I just thank you all very much for sticking with us and turning up each week and hearing what Alice has produced for you. And Alice and Steve, particularly today, well done. Excellent. It's been really, I find this really useful. So yeah, many thanks from me.
Thanks everyone for coming. Yeah,
thanks
great.
Once again, everybody. It's really been lovely having you all here. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.